So welcome to you all once again. So we were covering this physical ergonomic part. So this lecture is in continuation with the previous lecture. So in the previously we have covered the introduction to physiology. So musculoskeletal system we have covered, and some basics to metabolism we have covered. So now in this lecture we will be covering the cardiovascular system and respiratory system. So in the previous lecture we have talked about the various nutrients. Basically there are three basic nutrients which are required for the body, and related energy content and possible functions we have discussed in the previous lecture. So those are carbohydrates, lipids and proteins. So in series with that we have also described about the carbohydrates, which are the organic compounds that have a general chemical formula of CXHXOX, and basically these carbohydrates are the primary source of muscle energy. These are transformed into simple sugars, so glucose and glycogen. So the chemical formula for this glucose is C6H12O6, and for glycogen this formula goes to C6H10O5 molecule. So this glycogen is stored in the muscles and changed into a glucose as required. And the another kind of nutrients required for the body is protein. So that protein is broken down into amino acids. So this amino acid is nothing but an organic compound which consists of amino group and carboxylic group. So it consists of amino group and carboxylic group. And another kind of nutrient is lipid, include fat and converted into fatty acids. Those fatty acids are acetic acid and glycerol. So here we discussed that in the metabolic process the glucose reacts with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water, releasing energy in the process. So the chemical reaction that occurs is the molecule of the glucose reacts with the oxygen. It gives as a product as a carbon dioxide and some molecules of water plus some sort of energy. This particular energy is liberated because of this reaction. So this particular reaction is known as aerobic glycolysis if sufficient oxygen is available. And basically for the body, immediate energy requirement for any activity, let's say muscle contraction, are provided by 2-phosphate compound that are stored in the living muscle tissues. Those tissues are ATP and CP. In that, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, whose molecular formula is C10H16 and 5P3O13. So this is the chemical formula for ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. And another the kind of tissue is muscle tissue is CP. So this CP stands for creatine phosphate. Its chemical formula is C4H10 and 3PO5. So in the case of ATP, energy is made available to the cell by hydrolysis, in which one of the triphosphate bonds is broken to form ADP. So this ADP is adenosine diphosphate. So, the kind of reaction that takes place, which I am writing here as an ATP plus H2O, that will give the body so ADP plus energy. This is the energy used for muscle contraction. This particular energy used for, in fact, muscular contraction. Okay. So, in order for the muscle cells to continue to be supplied with energy, this ADP must be converted back to ATP. So, this is accomplished by three possible mechanisms, one of which involves the CP, that is creatine phosphate in the cell according to the following reaction that I am writing here. So, ADP plus CP plus energy gives you ATP. So, it is a completely reversible process. So, thus CP acts as a we can say that as a backup energy source by reacting with ADP to replenish the supply of ATP for continued muscle activity. So, if we could name it as equation 1 and equation 2. So, the use of CP in this reaction number 2 is the fastest way to produce ATP. So, however, the energy generated capacity of CP is very limited. So, for sustained muscular activity, the alternate way of producing ATP must be used. So, these alternative involve reactions known as the glycolysis. So, this glycolysis is the process in which glucose is broken down to one another molecule is known as pyruvic acid, whose molecular formula is C3H4O3, and energy is released and used to form ATP molecule. If sufficient amounts of oxygen are available, then this pyruvic acid is oxidized to form carbon dioxide and water. However, the glycolysis can also take place without oxygen. In this case, it is known as anaerobic. But the products of the reactions are different from those in the presence of oxygen. So, if it is in presence of oxygen, with oxygen it is known as, so glycolysis, which takes place with oxygen, then it is known as aerobic glycolysis. So, so there are basically two important differences in these terms of, in these forms of glycolysis, is that the first kind of difference which we can find out in the book as well, that this aerobic glycolysis produces about 20 times the energy compared to an aerobic reactions. This energy is then used to increase the amount of ATP and creatine phosphate available for continued muscle activity. The second point is accumulation of lactic acids in the muscle tissue resulting from an aerobic glycolysis is principal cause of muscle fatigue. Weaknesses and pains. So, why this lactic acid is coming into picture, that if insufficient oxygen is provided, then this pyruvic acid is converted to lactic acid. So, the presence of oxygen in the body is important, because this particular lactic acid is produced because of the insufficient, due to insufficient oxygen provided. So, basically the accumulation of lactic acid in the muscle tissue resulting from the anaerobic glycolysis is principal cause of muscle fatigue, weaknesses and pain. So, these conditions ultimately limit the amount of activity that a muscle can continue to perform. So, now we will go to the next topic, that is cardiovascular system. So, in that these topics are understanding of the functioning of this topic and various parts of the body is very important in order to make yourself aware of the ergonomical factors. Because if you are not physically fit, you cannot contribute to the system design or product design, or any you cannot you cannot perform work as an ergonomist, because it is very much essential that you should know the physical aspects, cognitive aspects and other aspects like the knowledge related to physical work environment in which you are working. So, those knowledge is very much important for an ergonomic learner. So, as a next topic we will try to understand the basic function of cardiovascular and respiratory systems, which are essential part of our body and that directly affects the performance in terms of physical effort is concerned. So, in that cardiovascular, our discussion related to the metabolism and glycolysis indicates that delivery of oxygen is very much important, and in fact the key factor in the efficient liberation of energy from glucose for any kind of muscle activity. So, this oxygen is basically captured from the air by our respiratory system. So, I am repeating this sentence once again, that oxygen is basically oxygen is captured from the air by our respiratory system. So, presence of oxygen is very much important as far as our metabolism is concerned and other body part functioning is concerned. So, this particular respiratory system consists of many parts that I am going to describe in detail. So, here the oxygen, importance of oxygen we have understood. So, the delivery of oxygen and glucose and other nutrients to muscle cells and organs is accomplished by the cardiovascular system. So, a model of these two systems I am going to illustrate in next slides. Before that, we need to learn that what are the basic components of the cardiovascular system. So, in that cardiovascular system, delivery of oxygen, basically delivery of oxygen glucose and other nutrients to muscle tissue and organs is accomplished by cardiovascular system. Okay. So, our primary and this particular cardiovascular system consists of heart, arteries, veins, capillaries. So, it is very interesting to know that the functioning of these subparts, these parts which as a whole build the whole cardiovascular system. So, in that the function of heart is the pump that drives the circulation of blood throughout the body. The function of artery, it delivers oxygen, glucose and other nutrients from lungs and digestive tract to muscle tissue and organs. Role of veins is it delivers carbon dioxide and waste products to lungs, kidneys and liver. Capillaries, these are the small blood vessels between arteries and veins to exchange nutrients and waste between blood and tissue. So, another component is nasal activity, that is nose. It inhales air, that is oxygen, and exhales carbon dioxide. Air passageway connecting nasal cavity and lungs. Lungs, it consists of alveoli, that is the air containing cells that provide for exchange of gases in the blood circulating through them. So, it is 200 to 600 million alveoli in the adult human lungs, and its surface area is 70 to 90 meters square, that is around 750 to 970 feet square. So, this taken from the MP Groover book. So, this I found it most interesting and most important schematic, which is showing that the major component of respiratory and cardiovascular systems and how they work together to transport material necessary for metabolism. So in that we have to since the basic components we have covered and their functioning, now we have to learn the what are the placement of particular component and what are the energy sources and the step by step procedure through which that particular physical activity is performed by our body. So as you can see from this figure, this lungs are of very much important and of particular interest in metabolism, because they are the source of oxygen used by the muscle cells. So they also exhaust this carbon dioxide from the body. This particular lungs, basically lungs are the primary component of human respiratory system, which includes nasal cavity and air passageway between it and lungs. The passageway extends from the neck into chest, where it connects to the right and left main bronchi leading into the lungs. This bronchi divide and subdivide into increasingly smaller passageway culminating in microscopic alveoli, which are the air containing cells of the lungs. So the alveoli is the air containing cells of the lungs. So although small, they are huge in quantity inside our body. So these are about 200 to 600 million and providing 70 to about 90 meter square area, in fact of the surface area in an adult human for oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. Apart from that, the oxygen contained in the air inhaled into the lungs and is diffused into the blood, which basically flows back to the heart, and this connected lung and heart is connected with the passage of oxygen, and oxygen this inhaled into the lungs is diffused into the blood and flows back to the heart and is pumped throughout the body by heart. So basically this through arteries this oxygen goes to the digestive tract, and this oxygen helps in the digestive tract in digestion of the food as well, and in the digestive tract it has converted to oxygen and suitable nutrients required for our body, which goes to the muscle tissue, that is helping in the physical activity which we perform on the daily basis. So as a waste product, these muscle tissues are liberating this carbon dioxide, heat and water. So that water in the form of perspiration is going outside the body via skin. So again that carbon dioxide is also going to the vein via vein to the heart, and this carbon dioxide from heart goes to the lung, and lungs again exhales this carbon dioxide from the body. So, this is in a nutshell the whole respiratory and cardiovascular system components and their functioning, which we need to understand because these are our body parts, and we need to have a proper knowledge or understanding of the various functions in order to live longer. So, this is all about in a nutshell the functioning and of the various component of this coupled system. So, since we are more concerned with the physical activities, so what happens exactly when the demand of the physical effort arises. So, when physical demand on the human body increase because of the greater muscle activity, the respiratory system and cardiovascular system must work harder. So, the body must respiratory plus cardiovascular system must work harder. So, when the greater physical demand is there, so it gives pressure to each and every component of this coupled system. So, lungs, heart, digestive tract, muscle tissues, and as well as the skin, both are all get influenced. So, the body must breathe heavier when physical demand increases, and as well as the oxygen requirement becomes higher when physical demand becomes higher, resulting more bloods basically more blood through lungs and heart must beat faster to distribute greater amount of oxygenated blood. To muscle tissue and return waste product to be expelled. Blood pressure increases in this condition, and proportionality more blood is distributed to the muscles when they are engaged in moderate to heavy physical activities. So, in addition to this mechanical action accomplished by muscles, body heat is produced. So, when mechanical action is performed, it is resulted into the production of heat within the body. So, the process of converting this chemical energy contained in the nutrients into the mechanical energy manifested in mechanical muscle activity is far from 100% efficient, and the body perspires to dissipate the excess heat produced by the increased muscle activity. So, in a nutshell, we can say that greater oxygen consumption, faster will be heart rate, and then increase in the perspiration process. So, these are the three principal reactions of the human body when we increase physical efforts or physical activities. So, first kind of reaction is oxygen consumption. More and more oxygen consumption will be there if we increase the physical efforts. Heart rate will be increased, second, and third is perspiration as a waste product. So, oxygen consumption and heart rate. So, this oxygen consumption and heart rate can be measured while a person is working and are frequently used in ergonomics to assess the level of strain on the human body due to physical or mental reaction or exertion. So, in this way the next aim will be to calculate and to understand about the oxygen consumption and heart rate. These two aspects we mostly used to calculate in order to have some data or interpretation in ergonomic research. So, in the next lecture we will be explaining the energy expenditure rate and what is its relation with the oxygen consumption and its increase in rate when the physical demand goes on increasing for the body. And in this way we right now we close this particular lecture. And just for the fact, did you know that in one day the average individual's heart exerts enough power to lift a 1 ton weight more than 40 feet off the ground? If you were a coach, which type of methods would you like to adopt to analyze performance and strategy of opposition to train your team accordingly so as to make them perform better? So, this is an ergonomic question and you have to think and analyze over those sentences. Just have a brief history of human physiology since we are dealing with physiology. So, there is a very much interesting fact that in 19th century physiologists such as Michael Foster, Max von Won and Alfred Binet, based on the Haeckel's ideas, elaborated what came to be called general physiology, a unified science of life based on the cell actions, later renamed in the 20th century as cell biology. So, I hope you are relating all the knowledge that we are sharing here with how much importance that particular ergonomic course is and in our life. So, in the 20th century biologists became interested in how organisms other than human beings function, eventually spawning the field of comparative physiology and ecophysiology. So, major figures in these fields include Knut Schmidt-Nelson, George Bartholomew. Most recently, evolutionary physiology has become a distinct subdiscipline. So, with this there is one more graffiti for you. In a football club, as you can see that coach, the new physios red hot on a pre-match stretching. So this kind of stretching this particular physio is giving to the player. So that's all for now. Thank you.